We went into those Michigan woods as a family of 4. We came out as 3. And what hunted us through that forest for 7 hours wasn't a wolf, wasn't a bear, and wasn't anything that should exist outside of nightmares. The authorities call it a tragic animal attack, but I know what I saw. I know what took my daughter, and I know it's still out there. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and last summer, my husband James and I took our 2 kids, Emma, who was 12, and Lucas, who was 9, on a camping trip to the Manistee National Forest in northern Michigan. We'd been planning it for months, a chance to disconnect from technology and spend quality time together as a family before the kids got too old to want to hang out with their parents. We arrived on a Friday afternoon and set up camp in a designated area about a mile from the main road. The campground was nearly empty. Just us and one other family camped about a quarter mile away. The ranger who checked us in mentioned that it had been a quiet season. Fewer visitors than usual. He said some locals had been reporting strange sounds in the woods at night and it had scared off the tourists. We laughed it off. The first night was perfect. We roasted marshmallows, told stories, and watched the stars. The kids were excited, running around the campsite with flashlights, exploring the immediate area. Around 10 p.m. we sent them to their tent, and James and I stayed up for another hour by the fire, enjoying the peace and quiet. I woke up around 3 a.m. to use the bathroom. The campfire had died down to embers, and the forest was completely dark. As I was walking back to our tent, I heard something that made me stop in my tracks. It sounded like a dog, but deeper. A low, rumbling growl coming from somewhere in the trees beyond our campsite. I grabbed my flashlight and shined it in the direction of the sound, but I saw nothing except trees and shadows. When I got back to the tent, I woke James and told him what I had heard. He grabbed his flashlight and checked around the campsite, but found nothing. No tracks, no signs of any animal. He said it was probably just a coyote or maybe someone's dog from the other campsite. I wanted to believe him, but something about that growl felt wrong. Too deep, too threatening. The next morning, the other family was packing up to leave. I walked over to say goodbye and asked if they'd heard anything strange during the night. The father, a big guy who looked like he'd been camping his whole life, got a weird expression on his face. He said they'd heard something too, growling and what sounded like heavy footsteps circling their camp around 4 a.m. His wife wanted to leave immediately, and he wasn't going to argue with her. That should have been our warning. We should have packed up and left too. But the kids were having so much fun, and we'd driven 6 hours to get there. James convinced me we were being paranoid. It was probably just wildlife being more active because there weren't many campers around. Animals are more bold when there are fewer humans in their territory. We decided to go on a day hike. There was a trail that looped through the forest for about 5 miles, following a ridge with supposedly beautiful views. We packed lunches, filled our water bottles, and set out around 9 a.m. The weather was perfect, sunny, mid-70s, with a light breeze. The first half of the hike was exactly what we'd hoped for. The kids spotted deer, we found a stream where we stopped for lunch, and everyone was in high spirits. We took dozens of photos. Emma and Lucas were getting along, which was rare for them. It felt like one of those perfect family moments you want to bottle up and keep forever. We were about 3 miles in when Lucas said he felt like we were being followed. Kids have active imaginations, so we didn't think much of it. But then Emma said she felt it too, that sensation of being watched. James and I exchanged looks. I was feeling it as well, though I didn't want to admit it and scare the kids. That's when we noticed the birds had stopped singing. The forest had gone completely quiet. Anyone who spends time outdoors knows that's not normal. There's always sound in a healthy forest. Birds, insects, small animals moving through the underbrush. But suddenly, there was nothing, just silence and the sound of our own footsteps on the trail. James suggested we head back to camp. We still had about 2 miles to complete the loop, but we could backtrack the way we came. It would be shorter. As we turned around, I saw it for the first time. Just a glimpse through the trees about 50 yards off the trail. Something large and dark standing upright. I blinked and it was gone. I didn't say anything because I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. But then Emma grabbed my arm and whispered that she'd seen something too. something big moving through the trees parallel to the trail. James tried to keep everyone calm, but I could tell he was scared too. We started walking faster. The kids stayed between us, and James had his hunting knife out. Not that a knife would do much good against a bear or whatever was out there. After about 10 minutes, we heard it. A sound I'll never forget. It started as a low growl that evolved into something between a howl and a roar. It was loud. So loud that it seemed to vibrate in my chest. And it was close. Lucas started crying. Emma was trying to be brave, but I could see the fear in her eyes. We were practically jogging now, no longer trying to hide our panic. That's when we heard the second one. The same howling roar, but from a different direction. There were at least 2 of them, and they were coordinating, flanking us. James made a decision. We were going to leave the trail and head straight toward where we thought the road was. Following the trail meant staying predictable. These things, whatever they were, knew the trails. They were hurting us. If we cut through the forest, maybe we could lose them, or at least get to the road faster. It was the right decision and the wrong decision at the same time. Right, because it probably saved 3 of our lives. Wrong, because it's what got Emma killed. We pushed through thick underbrush, James in front clearing the way, me bringing up the rear with the kids between us. The forest was dense here, away from the maintained trail. We had to climb over fallen logs and push through tangles of branches. It slowed us down, but we kept moving. That's when I saw it clearly for the first time. It emerged from behind a massive oak tree about 30 feet away, standing upright on 2 legs, at least 7 feet tall, maybe more. The body was covered in dark gray fur, muscular and massive, but the head... God, the head was like a wolf or a dog, but huge and mounted on a thick neck. The snout was elongated, filled with teeth that I could see even at that distance. And the eyes, yellow eyes that locked onto me with an intelligence that made my blood run cold. It wasn't just an animal. This thing was thinking, calculating, hunting. I screamed. James turned around and saw it too. He grabbed Emma and Lucas and started running, yelling at me to follow. The creature dropped to all 4s and gave chase. When it ran on all 4s, it was incredibly fast, moving through the forest like it was made for it. We ran blindly, crashing through the forest, no longer caring about direction, just trying to get away. I could hear it behind us, getting closer, the sound of something massive moving through the underbrush. Heavy breathing, and then that growl again, so close I could feel it. James suddenly stopped and turned around, putting himself between the creature and our family. He had the knife ready and was shouting at it, trying to scare it off. The creature stopped about 10 feet away, standing upright again. It tilted its head, almost like it was amused. Then it opened its mouth and let out a sound that I can only describe as a laugh. A horrible, rasping sound that was almost human. That's when the second one appeared. It came from our left, cutting off our escape route. This one was slightly smaller, but just as terrifying. Gray-brown fur and those same yellow eyes. We were surrounded. James was screaming at us to run, to get the kids and run while he held them off. I grabbed Lucas's hand and Emma's hand and we ran. The last thing I heard was James shouting and the creature's snarling, then his scream, cut short. We ran for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. My lungs were burning and my legs felt like they were going to give out. Lucas was crying so hard he could barely breathe. Emma was in front, leading us, being so brave for her little brother. That's when I realized we'd made a fatal mistake. We'd run in the wrong direction. Instead of getting closer to the road or civilization, we'd gone deeper into the forest. We were lost. We stopped in a small clearing, all 3 of us gasping for air. I tried to think clearly through the panic. James was gone, dead or dying back there in the woods. We were lost, and those things were still hunting us. I could hear them in the distance, that horrible laughing sound. They were playing with us. I pulled out my phone. No signal. We were too deep in the forest. I tried to remember everything I knew about survival. We needed to find water. Water would lead to people eventually, but I had no idea which direction to go. Emma saw them first. Movement in the trees around the clearing. Not 1 or 2. More. At least 4 of the creatures moving through the shadows, circling us. They weren't attacking. They were watching, waiting. This was a game to them. I pushed the kids behind me and picked up a large branch from the ground. It was a pathetic weapon, but it was something. I shouted at the creatures, trying to make myself seem bigger and more threatening than I was. One of them, the largest one, stepped into the clearing. In the full light, it was even more horrifying. The face was elongated like a wolf's, but there was something almost human about the eyes and the way it moved. It stood easily 7.5 feet tall on 2 legs, with massive shoulders and arms that ended in hands. Not paws, hands with fingers and claws. It was wearing the skin of a wolf, but had the build and bearing of a man. It stared at me for a long moment. Then its gaze shifted to Emma and Lucas. I saw something in those eyes that made my blood run cold. Recognition, intelligence, intent. This thing was deciding which one of us to take. I did the only thing I could think of. I charged it, screaming at the top of my lungs, swinging the branch like a baseball bat. It was stupid and suicidal, but I needed to distract it from my kids. The creature seemed surprised. It stepped back, and I managed to hit it across the snout with the branch. The branch shattered on impact. The creature's expression changed. The almost playful curiosity was replaced with anger. It swiped at me with one of those massive hands, and I felt claws rake across my shoulder. The pain was instant and overwhelming. I fell to the ground, blood soaking through my shirt. Emma was screaming. Lucas was frozen in terror. The creature turned its attention back to them, and I knew I couldn't stop it. I tried to get up, but my left arm wouldn't respond. The claws had cut deep. Then Emma did something incredibly brave and incredibly stupid. She grabbed Lucas's hand and ran. Not away from the clearing, toward one of the creatures. She ran right at it, and at the last second, dodged to the side. The creature, surprised by the bold move, hesitated just long enough for Emma and Lucas to slip past it and back into the forest. The creature that had attacked me let out a roar and gave chase. 2 others followed. I struggled to my feet, clutching my bleeding shoulder, and ran after them. I had to keep up. I couldn't lose them. I followed the sounds of breaking branches and Emma's voice. She was talking to Lucas, keeping him calm, telling him to keep running. My brave, smart daughter leading her little brother to safety while being hunted by monsters. We ran for over an hour. I know because I kept checking my watch, convinced that time was moving differently, that this nightmare would never end. My shoulder was screaming in pain, and I was leaving a blood trail behind us. But we kept moving. Finally, blessedly, we heard a sound that meant salvation. Cars. We could hear traffic in the distance, the road. Emma had somehow, miraculously, led us in the right direction. We pushed through the last stretch of forest and stumbled out onto a 2-lane highway. A car screeched to a stop. The driver, an elderly couple, saw us covered in blood and dirt and immediately called 911. The wife gave me a towel to press against my shoulder wound while the husband kept watch on the tree line. As we waited for the ambulance, I looked back at the forest. 3 of the creatures were standing just inside the tree line, partially hidden by shadows, watching us, making sure we actually left their territory. The largest one, the one I'd hit with the branch, was staring directly at me, and I swear, I saw it nod, like it was acknowledging something. Then they turned and vanished back into the forest. The ambulance arrived 10 minutes later. Then the police. They asked us what happened, and I told them the truth. 2 officers went into the forest to look for James. They found him 3 hours later, or what was left of him. The official report said wolf attack, possibly a pack of wolves that had become aggressive due to rabies or starvation. But I know what I saw. I know what hunted us. And I know James didn't die to any regular wolves. The police found tracks, massive paw prints that showed signs of bipedal movement in places. They found fur samples that they sent to a lab. The results came back as canine, but with anomalies they couldn't explain. They found where we'd been chased through the forest, following the blood trail from my wound, but they didn't find the creatures. They didn't find any den or nest or evidence of where these things lived. Emma still isn't speaking about what happened. She's seeing a therapist, but she won't talk about that day. She has nightmares every night, and I hear her screaming for her father. Lucas is too young to fully process it. He thinks wolves killed his daddy, and I haven't corrected him. What would I say? That daddy was killed by monsters that shouldn't exist? My shoulder healed, but the scars are deep. 4 parallel claw marks from my shoulder blade to my collarbone. The doctor said I was lucky. Another inch to the left and the claws would have severed my carotid artery. But I don't feel lucky. I feel haunted. Because twice in the past month I've woken up in the middle of the night to see yellow eyes staring at me through my bedroom window. We live in a suburb now. Sold our house and moved to a neighborhood with streetlights and neighbors close by. But somehow they found us. Last week I found massive tracks in the dirt behind our shed, paw prints that showed the same bipedal pattern. And yesterday, Lucas showed me a picture he drew in school. He said he drew the big dogs he saw in the woods, but the picture shows something standing upright. Something with a wolf's head and a man's body. Something reaching out with clawed hands. They're still watching us, still following us, and I do not know if they're waiting for us to return to their territory or if they're planning to come for us here. The police think I'm crazy. The therapist thinks we're all suffering from PTSD and creating shared delusions. James's family thinks I'm making excuses for leaving him behind to save myself and the kids. But I know the truth. There are things in the Michigan forests that hunt people. Things that stand upright like men but have the heads of wolves. Things that are intelligent and territorial and deadly. They call them dogmen in the local legends. Cryptids. Monsters that don't exist. But I know they exist. I have the scars to prove it. I have a dead husband to prove it. And I have 2 traumatized children who will never be the same to prove it. If you're reading this and you're planning to camp in the northern Michigan forests, especially around the Manistee National Forest, please be careful. If you hear deep growling or howling that doesn't sound quite right, leave immediately. If you see tracks that show a mix of paw prints and something more human, get out of there. And if you see something standing upright in the trees, something with a wolf's head and yellow eyes, run. Run and don't look back. Because they're real. The dogmen are real. And they're still out there in those woods, hunting. Waiting for the next family that ventures too far from civilization. The next victims in their territory. We were lucky. 3 of us survived. But James didn't. And part of me wonders if they let us live for a reason. If they're still stalking us, waiting for the right moment to finish what they started that day in the forest. I don't sleep anymore. Not really. I doze off for an hour or 2, but I always wake up to check the windows, to make sure those yellow eyes aren't staring back at me. The kids have moved into our bedroom. We all sleep in the same room now, with the door locked and a baseball bat next to the bed. Yesterday, I found scratches on our back door. Deep gouges in the wood, like something had been testing it. Testing to see if it could get inside. The police came and took a report. They think it's teenagers pranking us or maybe a large dog.